Hey guys, if it's okay with you, I think I'll just go in first. Be right back. Can you imagine how Alan Shepard must have felt all those years ago? Must have been pretty cool. And I think if you haven't had a chance yet to come inside here and see how beautiful this crew capsule is, I hope you take the time to do it. And I think when you get in here, you'll have that same emotion, this idea that many of us, certainly me, have lived with since we were little kids, that we want to go to space. Everybody says that when you go to space, it changes you. All the astronauts come back with stories like that. It's very emotional to see this Earth, see the thin limb of the atmosphere. So I hope you guys get a chance to come in, and then I hope you get a chance to ride New Shepard one day up into space. All right, I'm going to come out now, even though I don't want to. Well, over here, you can see the New Shepard booster. This is the first rocket-powered vehicle to fly above the Kármán line into space and then land vertically under rocket power on the Earth. It's an incredible achievement that a lot of very hardworking Blue Origin teammates built over a large number of years. You can see it's a little scarred. We have tortured this vehicle, including on its last flight, where we did a very stressing escape test. Inside the crew capsule, when you go in, you'll see there's a kind of a tabletop shaped thing in the center. That's where the solid rocket escape motor is located. And right at maximum dynamic pressure, right at transonic, we decided that we would torture this beautiful booster by lighting that solid rocket motor, seeing what would happen to the booster. We were pretty confident that things would go well for the crew capsule, but the booster was never designed to survive an escape event. Why should it really? The whole reason you're escaping is that something bad has happened to the booster. But the booster has been built very robustly, and it was able to fly through those escape motor disturbances. But it did take quite a beating. But we're glad we got it back, because we get to show it off, bring it to events like this. We're going to send it on a short road show to various venues, and then we're going to retire it to a museum somewhere. This is all about reusability. Reusability is the key to getting millions of people living and working in space. And it has to be real, operational reusability. It can't be just theoretical reusability. If you recover and spend a lot of time and money x-raying everything, revalidating everything, refurbishing everything, it's not actually going to lower costs. You have to get much more like airliner operations. You have to be able to land, refuel, maybe do some minor inspections, and then off you go again. And that's where we're going to get to. This vehicle between flights had a very small amount of refurbishment. We had to touch up the thermal protection system on the aft, but that's easy. It's just spray on. It wasn't very difficult. And we inspected it. And we learned a lot. All of the learnings that we're getting from New Shepard are going into our orbital vehicle, New Glenn. We've already learned so much just by designing and building and flying New Shepard, and all of those learnings are already incorporated into our New Glenn design. So with that, I think I'll just turn it over for questions if there are any. I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Alan Boyle with GeekWire.
Hey, Alan.
Hey. So, a year ago, you were telling us what the road ahead looked like, that if everything went well, the first test astronauts might go up at the end of this year, the first customers next year. Can you update us on that? I suspect that you've got this little thing called the BE4 engine that you need to concentrate on, so there may have been changes in the schedule, but when do you expect New Shepard to do the next iteration of test flights and then go into service?
The short answer to your question is when it's ready. I always remind the team that we're not racing, that this vehicle is going to carry humans. We're going to make it as safe as we can make it. We're going to test it. We're not going to take any shortcuts. So we'll put humans on this vehicle when we're ready and not a second sooner. We're really not constrained by our BE4 activities. Both things are fully staffed, and so we're making great progress on BE4, and we're making great progress on New Shepard. But I think it's very, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, and it's a mistake to race to a deadline when you're talking about a flying vehicle, especially one that you're going to put people on.
Next question is from Andy Pastor with the Wall Street Journal.
Hi there.
Hey.
Can you tell me what kind of a launch cadence you're hoping to reach in the beginning when you start commercial service, and also any kind of marketing programs or efforts to get people to sign up? Do you think it's time to start doing that?
I think we'll probably start taking down payments and selling tickets when we're closer to commercial operations. We have a whole test program ahead of us. The vehicle that we're building right now, and it's really two vehicles, it's the crew capsule and the booster. And the vehicles that we're building right now are the ones that are designed to carry humans. So these are the human-rated articles. We're going to, and so when they're, but the good news about our architecture is it's completely autonomous. So we can fly these vehicles with no humans, even though they're human capable, and do that as many times as we want until we're confident and comfortable. And then we can put humans on board. If we had to have pilots, for example, you couldn't use that approach. But the full autonomous nature of the vehicle makes it easy to do that. So we'll take advantage of that autonomy, and we'll test this. When that test program is done, then we'll know when our first dates will be, and that's probably a good time to start selling tickets. So that's still somewhat, I'm hopeful, by the way, that could still be 2018. We'll see, but it's not. It's really going to be when we're ready.
Next
cadence.
question.
As for cadence, I think it's really, we can build as many of these vehicles as we need. The real question is, what will the customer demand be? So I think you can do research and surveys and ask people if they want to go, but it's really hard to know. Really, you just have to do the experiment. So we're very close to finding out what the customer demand will be. But I think nobody knows that for sure yet.
Next question is from Chris Davenport with the Washington Post.
Hey, Jeff.
You work for a fabulous publication, Chris.
Thank you.
I'm so impressed.
Thank you. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the training, what the astronauts will need to go through, how long that'll be, and what is there to do in Van Horn?
Very minimal training. Really, it shouldn't be more than a day of training, and the system has been designed from the very beginning so that the training can be minimal. You have to know how to strap yourself in and a few other things, but it's not a significant amount of training. And there is a lot to do. 10,000-year clock is, don't forget. So if you want to bring your family and visit the 10,000-year clock while you're doing your training, you could do that.
Next question is from Frank Mooring with AvWeek.
Hi, Jeff. Thank you for doing
this. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. We've been told that what you're going to learn with New Shepard is going to transfer into New Glenn. Can you elaborate a little bit about what you're trying to learn by operating frequently with this vehicle suborbitally, and how that would translate into the orbital vehicle?
Well, of course, all boosters are suborbital. There is no such thing as an orbital booster. In fact, I'm thinking it might be interesting to build a small second stage for this new Shepard booster, because we could use it to put small sats into orbit. It'd be perfectly capable of being a first stage for a small orbital vehicle. The learnings are often at the detail level. It's things about when you're designing for engine life. What kinds of things are you learning about? Where are the problems? What kind of seals do you want to use? What kind of bearings do you want to use? What kind of materials do you want to choose? And so on and so on. So a lot of those details are the things that you learn, and you can't learn them at the conceptual level. You have to learn them through actual practice. You know, amazingly, we humans get better at everything we practice. And one of the reasons that we haven't made as much progress in spaceflight as I think most of the people around here would have liked to have seen over the last 50 years is that we just haven't been able to practice that much. The most used launch vehicles in the world on a good year may fly a dozen times a year. That's a good year. And anything you do a dozen times a year, you never get truly great at. You need to be flying at a much higher frequency. But to do that, you need a mission that supports that. This is one of the reasons that the tourism mission for New Shepard can be so valuable, because I think it can hopefully support a much higher flight rate than just 10 or 12 times a year. And you'll learn so much through that practice effect. At the same time, many of the things, rockets want to be big. And so one of the reasons that we chose the vertical landing architecture for New Shepard is that we knew it would scale to New Glenn. When you're doing vertical landing, you're solving the inverted pendulum problem. You guys know this. You know this already. The smaller the object, the harder it is to balance on the tip of your finger. So as we go to larger and larger vehicles, that problem just gets easier and easier. The vehicle has more, the booster stage has more, a higher moment of inertia, and it's easier to land. So we're really excited about that step, but we have learned so much, and most of it's in the details.
Next question is from Irene Klotz with Reuters.
Hi.
Hey, Irene.
So last year, you told us that you hoped to have Blue Origin personnel begin test flights before the end of this year. Is that still on schedule? And the other question I have is that you and SpaceX seem to be reading the same book this week. As far as the lessons of reusability, you have any comments or any impacts from the reflight of the Falcon last week? Thanks.
I think we're very like-minded in a lot of ways, and so you know I believe deeply in vertical landing as a good architecture because it's scalable. I think that reusability is the key to lowering costs. I think you should do that first with the booster stage. Many of these things are very similar. It's a little different in that instead of starting with an expendable vehicle and then kind of working your way toward a reusable one, I wanted to start with a high flight rate New Shepard vehicle, learn all those lessons at this scale, and then build New Glenn already knowing all of those lessons, designed from the ground up to be reusable. So the engineering approach is a little bit different, but I think we're very, very like-minded. And I forgot your first question. I'm sorry. Oh, 2017. The vehicle we're building is the human-rated vehicle. We're going to go through the test program, and we'll put humans on it when we're happy. I don't think it's going to be 2017 at this point. It could be, but I still think we could do commercial paying passengers in 2018.
Next question is from Morgan Brennan with CNBC. Hi, thanks. Just today, competition with your other company, Amazon, has been in the news, sort of blamed for Payless filing for bankruptcy. When it comes to space, will Blue Origin be just as competitive? And I know you're talking about reusability right now. What's the strategy there?
Well, of course we'll be just as competitive. And but how do you compete? What's the real? When people say that that an entrant is disruptive in an industry, what they really mean is that customers are adopting that new way. And so to be, we were at Amazon, we've had a lot of inventions that we were very excited about, and customers didn't care at all. And believe me, those inventions were not disruptive in any way. And so the only thing that's disruptive is customer adoption. If you can invent a better way, and if customers agree that it's a better way, then they will use that. And so that's exactly what we're trying to do at Blue Origin. Listen, we have a system here. We're in an equilibrium in space. The whole space industry is too small. It's a very small industry. The whole launch services market is, I don't know, $2.5 billion. It's not a very big industry. And so the reason is we don't fly very often. You know, if airplane flights cost the same as they did in 1940, that would also be a small industry today. But actually, there are millions and millions of passenger miles flown. And it's because the costs have come down so significantly. And we need to get there. If we can make access to space low cost, then entrepreneurs will be unleashed. You will see creativity. You will see dynamism. You will see the same thing in space that I've witnessed on the internet over the last 20 years. And believe me, that's fun. Right now, you can't see that. And the reason you can never get there is because the price of admission is too high. If I'm a kid in my dorm room, I can create the next Snapchat because the price of admission to create Snapchat is low. But I can't create the next, planetary mission or the next, exploration satellite or anything. Most of the things you want to do in space that are truly interesting right now have a very high price of admission. And as a result, you can't unleash the creativity of thousands and thousands of startup companies and kids in dorm rooms everywhere. But if we can reduce the cost of launch by a factor of 10 and then by a factor of 100, and believe me, that's going to take time and a lot of hard work. But if we can do that, you will be living in a completely new world. It'll be a golden age of space exploration. You'll see so many people. Then it will be a big industry and a very dynamic and fascinating one. It'll be a golden age.
Next question is with Jeff Faust with Space News.
Do you have a ticket price in mind for New Shepard flights, and what are you looking at in terms of number of people you want to fly in the first year or two?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to either question. So I don't know yet what the ticket price is going to be. We're working on that, and we'll figure something out. But, we still have time. It's not an urgent thing to figure out because we're not ready to sell tickets anyway. And then really, the customer demand is going to be up to the customers. As I said before, I've thrown parties before that nobody came to. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I'm super optimistic. But customers get to decide what the flight rates are. I hope they decide they want to fly.
Next is Nicholas St. Fleur with the New York Times.
Hey there. Thanks for doing this and for taking my question. So you said you're not sure what the ticket prices will be, but a lot of us can assume they'll be pretty high. So do you have any plans to maybe raffle off tickets so people who can't spend that much would be able to do it within your first few flights?
Well, that's a fascinating idea. We have not spent a lot of time thinking about that, but I kind of like that idea. You want a marketing job? Maybe we should do something like that. And you're right. The tickets are, again, if you use kind of airlines as an analogy, back in the 1940s, 1950s, when people first started, really using airlines as a mode of transportation, it was really expensive, and you either had to be taking an important business trip, or you had to be really well heeled to be able to fly, transport yourself by aircraft. And of course, you fast forward to today, and airline tickets are very accessible to a very large cross section of people. And so that's what we'll have to get to. We got to chip away at it. It's step by step, ferociously, gradatum ferociter.
Richard Waters with the Financial Times.
Thank you very much. I've got two serious questions and one not quite so serious. The serious ones are, can you tell us a little more about how you see the cost curve coming down? What are the main factors and how fast will it come down? And then the other one related to that is, you talked about putting small satellites up with New Shepard. What would that do? Would that be very disruptive to the cost of launching satellites? And then the third final question is, when people
Wait. Just, I can't, no, it's okay. You can ask as many as you want, but I can't remember them all. I'm going to forget them. Ask them one at a time.
All right.
What was your first question?
It was the cost curve. How fast is it going to come down?
It's going to be very difficult, I think, in advance to know what the cost curve is going to be, you know, what the how low it's going to come down. Here's what I can tell you, though. I am determined to lower the cost of access to space. And we, at Blue Origin, only need 3 things to make that happen. Talented people, money, and patience. And we have all 3.
All right. The second question was about about putting up satellites with New Shepard. Is that a disruptive thing in terms of cost?
Well, small satellite launchers are not necessarily low cost in terms of amount of, you know, price per pound, price per kilogram is not necessarily attractive with a small sat launcher, but they do have certain advantages if you're doing, say, replacement of LEO constellation satellites, something like that. So there are some missions for small sat launchers. I think that for most satellite launches, New Glenn would be a much better vehicle. But it would be interesting to put a small second stage on this and use it as a small sat launcher. It's perfectly suited for that task.
All right, then one last very quick one. A lot of people, when they go into zero gravity for the first time, throw up. So
it takes time. They don't throw up right away. We're not going to worry about it. So it's a very, very good question, and it's one that I've gotten many times before talking to people about this, and I'm glad you brought it up. You should ask. There's some astronauts around, and Ashby is around here, but it takes about 3 hours before you start to throw up, and so it's a delayed effect. And this journey takes 10 or 11 minutes, so you're going to be fine.
Next is Kala Caulfield with Space.com.
I also have one serious question and one fun question. So in that extreme scenario, if no one shows up to this party and people don't buy tickets on New Shepard, what would that mean for the business model? Would you have to shift things around? How would it impact the company?
My business model right now, this isn't the future business model, but my business model right now for Blue Origin is I sell about $1 billion a year of Amazon stock, and I use it to invest in Blue Origin. So the business model for Blue Origin is very robust. And I do want, I think it's very important that Blue Origin stand on its own feet and be a profitable, sustainable enterprise. That's how real progress gets made. I do not want Blue Origin to be a not-for-profit. I want Blue Origin to be a thriving enterprise and to help open the gateway to this new generation of people who will have this dynamic entrepreneurial explosion in space. That's what we're going to do, and that can only be done if it's sustaining. But it's a long road to get there, and I'm happy to invest in it.
And if I could follow on the question that was just asked, it is a short flight, but what is the plan right now, say in the spacesuit design, for dealing with other forms of human waste?
Oh, no, go to the bathroom in advance. No. Well, listen, if you have to pee in 11 minutes, you got problems. I mean, it's like you can't even see a movie. You know, you got... So what we'll have here, and also the current plan is to board at T-minus 30 minutes. So the whole thing from boarding until you're back on the ground is probably 41 minutes, something like that. So you're going to be fine. You could dehydrate ever so slightly if you have a weak bladder.
Next is James Dean with Florida Today.
Hi, thanks. SpaceX recently indicated it spent something like $1 billion to develop a reusable system. About how much would you estimate you've spent to date to do the same?
I haven't disclosed that figure. I can tell you that we have spent a lot of money to date, and I think New Glenn is going to be on the order of $2.5 billion or so.
Great. Speaking of New Glenn, you've recently signed a couple of contracts to launch satellites. Can you tell us a little more about what you plan to do with New Glenn? How aggressively do you want to compete for commercial launch? Are you interested in DoD? And when might you launch people on that vehicle?
It's premature to, I just can't answer this question because I don't know the answers. If I knew, I would tell you. My singular focus is people in space. I want humans in space. Now, when you build something that has a high fixed cost like New Glenn, to make the business model close, you have to also use it for other things. And so we're going to have, our satellite customers are going to be super important customer base for us because they're going to help cover the costs in the early innings as we, but I think ultimately most of our flights will be taking people up into space. How long, that is going to take a while. We'll fly New Glenn in 2020, but we won't have humans on New Glenn in 2020. It'll be years after that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jeff, for your time.
Oh, yeah, that was fun, and I especially appreciate the fun questions. Thank you. And if it does turn out to be a problem, we'll figure out how to cram a bathroom in there. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jeff. Well done.
Goodbye.
Thank you to our special press guests for coming. At this time, I'd like to invite our special press guests for a VIP tour of our